The courtroom was electric, filled to capacity with people eager to witness a high-profile civil hearing that had unexpectedly pulled in national attention. Media cameras rolled discreetly in the corners, the clicking of press pens matched by murmurs from observers and clerks. At the center of it all sat the legendary Judge Judy Sheindlin, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense as always, with her gavel resting like a loaded weapon in front of her. She was known for taking no prisoners, and today, her target seemed clear. Across from her stood Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, composed and confident, dressed in a sleek charcoal gray suit with her signature bold lipstick. She stood tall with her hands clasped in front of her, radiating calm under pressure. The case at hand involved a legal technicality surrounding a civic lawsuit she had filed on behalf of a disenfranchised community in Texas, issues involving land usage, corporate overreach, and local government collusion. But the courtroom's atmosphere felt less about law and more about performance, especially for the judge. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. "Ms. Crockett," she said with an exaggerated sigh, "I sincerely hope you're more competent in Congress than you are with these filings." A chuckle rose from a corner of the room. Jasmine didn't blink. She just watched the judge, lips pressed in a thin, knowing line. "These complaints," the judge continued, flipping through the documents with theatrical impatience, "read like they were thrown together by a first-year law student rushing through a deadline." Again, muffled laughter from the spectators. Judge Judy had landed her first punch. Still, Jasmine held her ground. She didn't shift her stance, didn't bite back. Instead, she simply nodded once and let the judge finish. Judy's eyes sparkled with the thrill of having the upper hand. "Let me be very clear," she went on, raising a finger. "This isn't Congress. This isn't a talk show or a campaign stage. This is a court of law where facts, evidence, and procedure matter, not soundbites." There was no mistaking the smirk that followed. Jasmine's silence only deepened the impact of the moment. Cameras caught her stillness, that subtle half-smile she wore like armor. The audience interpreted the moment as a checkmate. Social media clips were already being crafted in real time. Judge Judy schools grandstanding Congresswoman, one tweet read, racking up views within minutes. To most in the room, it seemed like a clear win for the judge. She had struck fast, publicly, and with practiced efficiency. It felt like a carefully orchestrated takedown. But beneath Jasmine's measured silence, something was brewing. Her eyes, calm and unwavering, never left the judge's face. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. The room just didn't know it yet. The courtroom buzzed as people returned from recess, refilling their seats with coffee cups in hand and anticipation thick in the air. What had begun as a legal hearing was quickly turning into a national spectacle, with everyone eager to see if the fireworks from earlier would continue. Judge Judy re-entered first, her robe flowing behind her like the cape of a battlefield general. She took her seat with a stern expression, still riding the high of her earlier jabs. A few reporters exchanged glances, sensing she felt triumphant, perhaps too triumphant. Then Jasmine Crockett entered. She walked with a noticeable limp now, subtle but unmistakable if you were looking closely. Her stride was slower than before, deliberate. Her posture remained proud, but there was a slight unevenness to her step. She didn't try to hide it, nor did she explain it. Her aides walked beside her with quiet focus, and she took her seat. Calmly, as if nothing was amiss. Her eyes met Judge Judy's briefly. The judge tilted her head, almost in amusement, and leaned forward, her voice dipped in sarcasm. "Everything all right with you, Ms. Crockett?" she asked. "You seem to have developed quite the dramatic limp during recess." The question floated heavy in the room. A few uncomfortable chuckles came from the crowd. Jasmine didn't break eye contact. "It's nothing that hasn't been there for a while," she replied calmly. "A minor inconvenience. Doesn't interfere with my work." Before the judge could respond, one of Jasmine's aides quietly walked to the court clerk and handed over a sealed folder. The clerk opened it, reviewed the contents quickly, and passed it forward to the bench. Judge Judy opened the folder with casual disinterest, ready to skim through what she assumed was another batch of dull paperwork. But her expression changed within seconds of seeing what was inside. Her brows creased, her eyes paused mid-scan, and the lines of her mouth tightened. Inside were certified medical documents, X-rays, a letter from a surgeon at a Houston trauma center, and a timeline, One that placed Jasmine at the center of a violent protest, not as an observer but as a protector. The judge's fingers hovered over a photo. Jasmine crouched between protesters and police, shielding a teenager who had been shot with a rubber bullet. The next image showed her being carried off by two men, blood soaking through her pants. Still seated, Jasmine spoke without looking up. That dramatic limp you mentioned is the result of shrapnel embedded in my leg during a civil rights protest last year. I didn't publicize it because I didn't want pity or headlines. But since you questioned my posture in a public courtroom, I thought it best to clarify. The room was silent. The sarcasm drained from Judge Judy's face as the gravity of what she'd just mocked began to sink in. She shifted slightly in her chair, glanced back at the clerk for confirmation, and nodded quietly. Her earlier remarks now echoed awkwardly in the silence. Jasmine remained composed, unmoved by the judge's discomfort. She wasn't there to humiliate anyone. She simply wanted the facts to speak for themselves. And now, they had. Judge Judy's hands rested lightly on the medical file as she sat back in her chair, clearly unsettled. She stared at the documents without speaking, the courtroom completely hushed as everyone waited for her reaction. For someone who built her reputation on quick wit and even quicker judgment, this moment was unfamiliar. Her usual rhythm, the way she controlled proceedings with clipped confidence, was interrupted. She cleared her throat softly, more out of discomfort than command. The photos were jarring. One showed the metallic shards still lodged near Jasmine's right knee. Another featured a post-op image with a clear explanation from a trauma surgeon that removal could cause nerve damage. The diagnosis was permanent. Pain management and mobility braces had become part of Jasmine's daily life. But what struck Judge Judy more was a note handwritten by the doctor. Patient refused to take extended medical leave due to ongoing legislative responsibilities. Prioritized duties to district over full recovery. Judy looked up slowly, her eyes meeting Jasmine's once more, and for the first time since the hearing began, the edge in her voice dulled. I wasn't aware of this, she said, almost under her breath. The statement wasn't a concession of defeat, but it wasn't a challenge either. It was something rare from the bench, an admission of misjudgment. But Jasmine didn't use the moment to gloat. She rose from her seat and walked to the center of the room, her limp subtle but visible now that eyes were finally paying attention. I never planned to bring this into the courtroom, Jasmine began, her voice steady and strong. I've been dealing with this injury quietly, as part of my life. I didn't expect it to be a topic of courtroom discussion, much less mockery. Her words carried no venom, just truth. But when you chose to ridicule something you didn't understand, in front of cameras and reporters, you made it necessary to clarify. A wave of realization moved through the room, silent but potent. Some of the audience members who had laughed earlier now looked uncomfortable, their eyes lowered. One reporter gently placed their pen down, no longer scribbling, just listening. Judge Judy shifted in her seat, the gavel untouched now. Her authority hadn't been taken from her, it had simply been matched by something deeper, respect earned, not demanded. Jasmine continued, I'm not here for theater. I'm here because I care about the people affected by this case. My injury doesn't make me weaker. If anything, it reminds me every day of the work still left to do. No one dared interrupt. Even the usually snappy bailiff kept his eyes fixed on Jasmine, his face unreadable. Judge Judy exhaled through her nose and slowly nodded, then turned to the clerk. Let the medical documentation be entered into the official record, she said. Her voice was calm, quiet, even reverent. Jasmine returned to her seat without another word. The balance in the room had shifted entirely. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore, it was about truth, dignity, and the cost of leadership. In trying to embarrass Jasmine Crockett, Judge Judy had inadvertently revealed something far more powerful than legal skill. Resilience forged through pain, and strength defined not by posture, but by purpose. By the time the gavel finally struck, signaling the end of the hearing, the energy in the courtroom had undergone a complete transformation. Where there had once been smug laughter and derision, now there was quiet respect. Some of the audience members sat frozen in their seats, others slowly began rising, unsure if applause would be appropriate in a space so recently humbled by reality. The reporters had stopped scribbling quotes for scandal, they were now capturing a different kind of story. One that didn't end with a mic drop or a verbal takedown, but with dignity reclaiming its space. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Camera crews set up hastily, ready to dissect the unexpected turn of events. Congresswoman Crockett stuns courtroom with silent strength, one network broadcasted. Clips of Jasmine calmly addressing the judge, her limp now imbued with profound symbolism, went viral across every major platform. By evening, she was trending not for confrontation, but for grace. Memes flooded Twitter, not mocking ones, but tributes. A side-by-side image of Jasmine standing at a protest and then walking into court had the caption, "She doesn't just talk about justice. She bleeds for it." Meanwhile, Judge Judy was quiet. She had left the courtroom promptly, canceling her usual post-session media interview. Behind closed doors, she was reflective. That night on a scheduled morning show taping set to air the next day, she was asked directly about the confrontation. For a moment, she seemed to bristle, but then her tone softened. "I got it wrong," she admitted. "I mistook her silence for weakness, her limp for drama. What I learned is that some people carry pain you don't see until you shut up and look." Back in Washington, Jasmine Crockett was already back to work. She didn't issue a formal statement about the courtroom episode, nor did she participate in interviews despite repeated requests. For her, the story wasn't the courtroom or the judge, it was the people she had stood up for by filing that lawsuit in the first place. She remained laser-focused on housing reform, zoning abuses, and equitable access to city services in underserved communities. But those who saw her walk through the Capitol now paid closer attention. They noticed the brace peeking just slightly beneath her pant leg. And they noticed that she didn't hide it anymore. One evening, as she was leaving her office, a young staffer from a neighboring office stopped her. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said nervously, "I saw what happened in court. My little sister uses a brace too. She saw you and just lit up. She said, that's what a superhero looks like." Jasmine smiled warmly and placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Then tell her she's already won," she replied. And with that, she continued down the marble hallway, the faint rhythm of her steps echoing behind her, not a limp now, but a drumbeat of defiance. That moment in court had not defined her. It had revealed her. Judge Judy may have tried to expose a weakness, but what the world saw instead was the kind of strength that doesn't shout. It walks. Limp or not, it keeps walking.